Understand how async and await make promise code look like normal step-by-step code. Here is my boilerplate code, and what we are about to do here is how we can make a function return a promise using the async and await concept. So let's move on and get into writing the code. I have created some comments here as a guide for us on what to do, and there are about 7 steps that we need to follow in order to be able to complete this example. So the first instruction says create display function, create first promise function, create second promise function, create third promise function, create async function, use await, and then finally display final result. So let's start writing code for each of these guide. The first one says create display function. So I'll go ahead and make a simple function called my display. So we have set a parameter or data of some, and then this will be responsible for this will be responsible for displaying my results in this example. So I'm done with that. Then the step 2 says create first promise function. So I'll go ahead and call the promise function step 1, and inside it I'm going to return promise dot result. And inside it I'll put letter A. So I'll move on and create the second one and call it step 2, and this time it will receive a data of value, and I will return a promise resolver again, promise dot resolve the value from the previous step plus letter B. Then I'll move and create the third one and call it step 3. This also is going to receive a value as data, and then it will return promise dot resolve value plus letter C. Now you can see that I've completed the 3 promises. The 3 promise functions that I need to create. This is the first one, the second one, and the third one. Now, step 5 now says we should create async function. What exactly do we use async and await for in JavaScript? Well, async simply makes the function return a promise. So when you want your function to return a promise, you make use of async, and await on the other hand wait for a promise result. So it's like one passing something to the other. All these things happens in the background in your code, and when the result is available, it will be passed on, and then to now move on to be displayed to you for whatever the result of what your process is in your code. So now that I have this step 1, step 2, and then step 3, then I can then move on to create the async function as is needed on the code, on the instruction. So let's go and do that. Let's create the async function. And how do we create this async function, and what exactly is the purpose? Well, the purpose of this async function is that we want to use it to run this function in steps. We already have 3 functions here. If you look at it, step 1, step 2, and step 3. So we want to use this async function in order to run them. And how do you create it? So you just call the name async, then function, and the name of what we want to do. So we want to run what we have in our code. So now that we want to run these functions, instead of just calling them like this and say step 1 and using .then method like it used to be the norm in promises, well, we'll just assign this function to a variable. So let's say the first one is v1. So we'll just call the await part of the async. We are working with async and await. So this will process and this will receive. then we call it step 1. So you can see this opening and closing bracket, which is calling the function. Then we do the same thing for the second function, await step 2, and then the value gotten in step 1 passed it inside, and you do the same thing for the function 3 that you have. Now that you have all of this, it is now time for us to display our result. So how do you display the result? Well, we already have a function here by display, which is responsible for displaying results. So we just passed whatever that has been gotten inside 1, 2, 3 and passed to 3. We just display it inside this function. My display, and because it requires a data to be passed in, so passed in whatever we have inside v3. And right now, we are actually not getting anything displayed on the screen, as you can see. And why is that? So I want to take this, remove it from here, and put it here, create async function and await. Can use await because I've combined both together. You can see that here, this is the async part and this is the await part. So now it's time for us to display final results. And how do you display final results in JavaScript? How do you display final results when working with async and await? Well, don't forget you have a function here with a name run. You just call that function, and this will display the result. Well, right now nothing is displayed on the screen. That definitely means that something is wrong in our code. So let me quickly go and check what is wrong. And how will I do that? I will inspect my browser to see if I can get a clue to whatever that is wrong. You can see this promise resolve is not defined. So there is already an error here. You can see it is promise.resolve, but I wrote it together. And once I fix that, you can see the output, as you can see it right there on the screen. So the async makes a function return a promise and await for a promise result. So when this make a function return, when it makes the functions run, then this will be like a getter that will get that result to wait for the promise result and display it. And you can see the sequential flow of running the code step by step. Now, the advantage of this is that while this is running, this one would pause the function. So let these functions run first. When it is done, wait, and then move to step 2. When it is done, wait and move to step 3. So await pauses the function until the promises finish. That is one benefit of using async and await. And also another benefit is that async and await simplify promise code. Instead of chaining many.then method, we can write asynchronous code in a cleaner step-by-step style. You can see this the difference between this and chaining promises. You can see that this one makes us to write a more cleaner code, and it is simplified promise code. So instead of multiple dots then that will require us passing functions and whatever it is that we want to pass, we can simplify it with async and await in order to give us a cleaner code and a better performance for our results.